The following is a presentation of Comworld Media. The future of talk.
Hi, this is Phil Valentine. Diversity, diversity, diversity. We're bombarded with it. The Oscars must be diverse. Congress has to be diverse. The press needs to be diverse. They tell us diversity makes us great. But does it really? In a moment, I'm calling Bovine Scatology on that.
I'm calling Bovine Scatology with Phil Valentine.
Now, before you jump to some conclusion, Phil's a skinhead, Nazi, homophobe, he hates cultures, he hates people, he hates languages, he hates everything diverse. That's not true. I love diversity. I love other people. I love other cultures. I love other languages. I love what makes us different. But that's not the issue. The question is diversity the most important thing? Well, some people think it is.
And I've found time and time again that diverse groups outperform homogeneous groups.
That's Catherine Phillips. She's a professor at Columbia Business School.
They're more likely to share the unique information and perspectives that they have in their heads when they see that there's some surface level differences amongst them. Diversity serves as a trigger. It makes people dig deeper, work harder, question themselves. There's more conflict in these diverse groups, conflict of opinions and perspectives, and that leads to better outcomes. It leads to the right answer.
Well, that sounds good, but if you're talking about the trials and tribulations of pregnancy, you probably don't want me in the conversation. See, it depends on what you're trying to solve. It may sound like I'm stereotyping, but men are better at some things than women. Women are better at some things than men. Some cultures are better at some things than other cultures. Some races are better at things than other races. Take, for example, the Asian squat. If you don't know what that is, look it up. And if you're not Asian, don't even think about trying it. If you're in a group that's trying to solve problems peculiar to Asians, you don't need the help of black folks or white folks or Hispanics. Speaking of Asians, apparently Harvard thought they had too many of them. At least that's according to Edward Bloom. He founded something called Students for Fair Admissions.
So regardless of where you or your parents or your great-great-great-grandparents came from, we are here today to reclaim the cornerstone of America's civil rights movement. And that cornerstone is the proposition that your race and your ethnicity should not be used to help you in your life's endeavors or harm you in your life's endeavors.
And he argues in his case in the courts that Harvard discriminates against Asians because, well, they have too many of them. The court ruled against him. The judge said ensuring diversity at Harvard relies in part on race-conscious admissions. Race-conscious admissions. In other words, it has nothing to do with excellence. It has everything to do with diversity. But if the goal were to give the disadvantaged a leg up, race has very little to do with it. Disadvantaged has to do with income. And even though Harvard is admitting more minorities, they have one thing in common with their white brethren. They're almost exclusively rich. But if the Asians are the most qualified, why not let them into Harvard? Well, because then Harvard wouldn't look like America. You see, that's what they say. They want everything to look like America. Well, let's look at some things that are actually excelling and see if they look like America. According to the latest census figures, white folks make up about 72% of the population, Hispanics about 16%, black folks about 13%, Asians less than 5%. American Indians are less than 1%. I always love to come back to sports because that's where you really see colorblind excellence. Guess what? The NFL is 70% black, about 27% white, about 2% other. Doesn't look like America to me, but what's more American than football, huh? Baseball, you say? Well, that's about 58% white, it's 32% Hispanic, and about 7.5% black. Doesn't look like America there either. How about the NBA? 74% black, 19% white, about 2% Hispanic, and Asians, barely a blip. You know why that is? Do I have to tell you? What's the average height in the NBA? 6'7". What's the average height in China? 5'7". Outside of Yao Ming, you don't see many 7-foot Chinese guys. But recently, the NBA has started recruiting from Russia. I think they're getting these folks from Chernobyl or somewhere. These guys are absolutely gargantuan. But that's what you're looking for, tall people to play basketball. It's all about winning. The NBA doesn't care about diversity, at least not on the court. And neither do the fans. We care about excellence. We care about winning. We don't care if a sports team looks like America. We just want to win. Corporate America should be like a sports team. They shouldn't care about diversity. They should care about being the very best, having the very best people, regardless of what race or ethnicity or religion or sexual orientation. But corporate America is obsessed with diversity. They have diversity departments. They have chief diversity officers. Doug Melville is chief diversity officer for a Madison Avenue advertising agency. He gave a TED Talk at Syracuse, and he came up with this interesting phrase to describe himself.
When I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut, I was mixed race, half black and half white. And people would always ask me, well, which parent is which? And I would tell them, well, I have a funny story. My mom and dad, my 4 grandparents, and my 8 grandparents are all mixed race. So I made up a term when I was a kid called African American.
African American. I got to steal that one.
I was pushed and driven because I never really felt comforted by the kids I went to high school with or the kids around me. I actually used to have a African Hall of Fame when I found out Mariah Carey and Halle Berry, Lenny Kravitz. I used to hang it in my room, and our African hero, Barack Obama, man, he really is on the Mount Rushmore.
I don't know if you picked up on it, but listen to what he said in the middle of all that jocularity about his being different.
I was pushed and driven because I never really felt comforted by the kids I went to high school with or the kids around me.
He seems to get it on one level. He's pushed and driven by something that he perceived to be as a disadvantage. But now he's got a job as a diversity officer whose daily job is to point out how we're different. One of the points he made in his TED Talk was to check your bias. And he referred his viewers to a Harvard site where you could take a bias test. I took it twice, and I'll tell you what it showed when I'm Calling Bovine Scatology continues right after this.
I'm calling Bovine Scatology with Phil Valentine.
We're exploring if diversity really does make us great. As I was saying, I was watching this TED Talk from Doug Melville. Doug is the Chief Diversity Officer at TBWA, which is an advertising agency in New York. He had some really good points in his TED Talk.
Be yourself. There is only one you. So you need to express yourself and feel comfortable with all the attributes that you have.
And you'll get no argument from me there.
Eat out more. I want everyone here to make a commitment to go to a new restaurant in a cultural neighborhood and try new foods. This is a way to get all your senses involved. Taste new spices, listen to the music, talk to the waiter or waitresses in the restaurant to find out new things about the culture. Waiters
or waitresses? Apparently Doug ain't woke. But look, I have no problem with any of that at all. Even the check your bias tip. I mean, bias is not a good thing, so if you've got one, you probably need to check that. But how do you? Well, he sent us to a Harvard test on race. And I took the test as honestly as I knew how the first time around. They asked questions on poverty and all sorts of different things, and I answered those as honestly as I could. And then I took the test itself. They flashed up white faces and black faces, good words and bad words, and you were supposed to hit a key, an E or an I on your keyboard, based on black face or white face, which word is good and which word is bad. Well, they kept changing which key to hit for which was bad and which was good, so I spent half my time trying to figure out, am I hitting the right key? At the end of the test, it showed that I had a slight bias toward Europeans. So I took the test again, but this time I took it as a very liberal black woman. I mean, that is okay, right? I am allowed to identify as a black woman, right? And I got a whole slew of questions I didn't get before on social justice and this, that, and the other. I took the same test, went through it the same way, Faces popping up, I hit the keys. Words popping up, I hit the keys. At the end of it, it said I had a strong bias for Europeans. And I'm going, okay, strong bias for Europeans, and I'm a black woman. So at the end, I looked at the overall results for everybody who had taken the test, and overwhelmingly, they have a bias for Europeans. So, if you're white, you're all of a sudden wrought with guilt. If you're black, you're mad as hell because you have a bias in favor of Europeans too. And you didn't even know it, those white devils. But it got me to thinking about corporate America in general. How many corporations are sending their people to take this test? And after taking it, does it actually do more harm than good by further dividing us? But the big question is this: does diversity actually translate into excellence in the corporate world? I decided to compare apples to apples, so I got the Fortune 500 list of companies. And then I got Fortune's 100 best workplaces for diversity. Guess what? Of the top 5 companies for diversity, only 2 of them are in the Fortune 500. That's Comcast at number 32 and Publix Supermarkets at number 91. But check this out. There's only one company on the Fortune 500 top 10 that appears in the top 100 most diverse workplaces. That's AT&T, and they're at number 74. So what's the point? Diversity has nothing whatsoever to do with excellence. Excellence is colorblind. And if you're in charge of hiring at a corporation, you should be colorblind too. Because it doesn't matter if your company is 80% black, or 80% white, or 80% Hispanic, or 80% Asian. All you're concerned about is doing the very best job you can at whatever it is your corporation is doing. And you need to hire the very best people to do that. Because your primary focus is not the employees, it's the customer. And most of your customers couldn't care less about your diversity. If you think you disagree with that, let me ask you a question. Ambulance takes you to the hospital because you're having a heart attack. Do you want the most diverse doctor looking at you, or the best? That's what I thought. So where does all this diversity stuff come from? It comes from the universities. But ask them why their basketball team or their football team is 80% black, and they'll tell you they recruit the best players. Ask them why they don't do that on the scholastic side, and you'll get the dull stare of a dairy cow. Look, these folks can't answer that question, because if they're recruiting the best players for their sports teams, why aren't they recruiting the best students for their school? Aren't scholastics as important as sports? Well, apparently having a diverse student body is more important than having a diverse faculty. Pew Research Center found that white undergraduates make up 55% of colleges across America, 55% white. The faculty, 76% white. Black students make up 14% of the population in colleges across America. Only 6% of the faculty is black. Hispanics make up 20% of the undergraduate students in America. The faculty, only 5% Hispanic. Seems to be a matter of do as we teach, not as we do. But here's a nice little irony for you. The mainstream media are the folks who keep pushing this diversity thing. Pew Research also found that newsrooms across America are 77% white. That's 12 points above the national average. But you want to see where there's almost unanimous consent? Look at the politics of the journalist. Research done by the Center for Public Integrity found that in the 2016 election, journalists who gave money to political campaigns gave 96% to Hillary Clinton, the Democrat. Democrats outnumber Republicans over 10-1 at U.S. colleges and universities. We're told it's our diversity that makes us great. Tacos, pizza, soul food, kung pao chicken, they may make for interesting dining experiences, but that's not what makes us great. Famed economics professor Dr. Walter Williams from George Mason University had this brilliant observation. He said, Israel, Japan, and South Korea are among the world's least racially diverse nations. In terms of academic achievement, their students run circles around diversity-crazed Americans. It's true. So if it's not diversity that makes us great, what is it? It's what we have in common. Diversity doesn't make us great. Unity does. Is it better to have a company that boasts of 15 different languages spoken at work, or a company where everybody's on the same page? But that doesn't mean they all think alike. It's the difference in ideas that makes us great. Creative ideas seldom come from our race or our ethnicity or our religion. What we should really be celebrating is independent thinkers. But these people are all about diversity, except when it comes to diversity of thought. And isn't that the most important kind? So is it diversity that makes us great? Well, it can contribute to our greatness. But overall, I'm calling Bovine Scatology on that. We give it 4 out of 5 bulls. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember that you can find show notes and references all at bovinescatology.com. Make sure you follow us on social media. This is Phil Valentine. I'm calling Bovine Scatology is produced by World Media. All rights reserved.
This has been a presentation of World Media, the future of talk.